Only 308 days left to go in the year. Don't want to confuse you completely by putting 367 days in the year. Let's take a listen to Girl Talk and Mary Badami in Munich. Good morning, Mary.
Good morning. This is Mary Badami for Tempo. I call today's show, What's in a Name? The title is a quotation. Can you recall where it's from? It's part of an overused and much abused section of Shakespeare's Romeo and Juliet. Romeo and Juliet have fallen in love, but since their families are feuding, they realize the impracticality of their romance. So in Act 2, Scene 2, Juliet stands on her balcony and, thinking that she is alone, sighs, "Oh, Romeo, Romeo, wherefore art thou Romeo?" At this point, my high school English teacher would usually stop reading to emphasize that the word wherefore did not mean where, that Juliet was not nearsighted in calling out, "Where are you, Romeo?" but rather that it means why, how come, why must you be named Romeo? Juliet continues, "Deny thy father and refuse thy name, or if you will not, be but sworn my love, and I'll no longer be a Capulet." In this speech, Juliet is focusing on the tragic family feud then, and using the names Montague and Capulet as symbols of the differences between their families. Later on she adds, "Oh, be some other name. What's in a name? That which we call a rose by any other word would smell as sweet." And while those lines are also overquoted, they contain a very important truth about identity, which linguists, philosophers, and psychologists are fond of reminding us of. The map is not the territory it represents. The word rose is not the reality of roses. The name of a thing is not the thing itself. Sometimes we lose sight of that truth. What you call a thing may make a difference. Then again, it may not. Abraham Lincoln is supposed to have used that distinction between names and things to score against an opponent in a debate. Lincoln asked, "Suppose I call the tail of a mule a leg. How many legs will the mule have?" "5," replied his opponent. "No," replied Lincoln, "he would still have 4. Calling a tail a leg doesn't make it one." And yet names are very important to us. Take your own name, for instance. Your name is not your whole self, but it does represent you. How do you react when your name is misspelled, or when it's mispronounced? Does it annoy you? Do you feel irritated? Do you correct people who mispronounce your name? Some people toss it off lightly. Others go to great pains to correct someone who misspells or mispronounces their name. The issue arises for me in some letters from AFN listeners. A few times on this show I've encouraged listeners to write in giving the APO. What I didn't do was spell my name. And some listeners have written in with a question or a request, and obviously had great difficulty deciding how to begin. Our family spells it B-A-D-A-M-I, and many of you have made valiant efforts to approximate it when you wrote it. Some just wrote Mary, and had faith that the letters would arrive. The interesting thing is that most of the letters begin with a half apology. "Please excuse me if I've misspelled your name." Why are names so important to us? Important enough for most people to worry about whether they've spelled it right and to apologize for possibly getting it wrong. Why are names so important that some people get terribly annoyed if you mispronounce them? I think the answer is that we do recognize the name is not the person, but that it represents the person, and as such is very important to the person. We grow so used to our own name that we can almost instinctively find it on a list, or pick it out among long columns of a phone book. One company which specializes in tracing missing persons says that when a man tries to drop out of sight and assume a new identity, one of the hardest habits to break is automatically responding to his real name. Many of them keep their own first name because it's easier to respond to their real name than to break the habit and learn a new one. So thank you for your patience with my unspellable name. It's been a long time since I could be offended by any variations on it. Let's continue the topic of names next time, leaving you with a thought for the week. A rose by any other name would smell as sweet, but it might be a lot harder to spell. This is Mary Badami, in Munich, in tempo.
Thank you, Marie. Marilyn, Mary.